stores, they opened their shops, they did business. And so this is deeply disturbing. I need to now have information about what triggered it, what caused it to escalate before we can be in a situation to make intelligent comment about it.
Indeed.
Our teams are in the field.
Let's talk about allegations of vote buying and bribery, which have been rife not only during the voting process today, but also during the campaigns.
Yes.
The government is accusing. The government is accused of engaging. The governing party is accused of engaging in this, and so is the opposition. What have you observed?
Well, we haven't observed anything ourselves, but we have had many interviews over the past week with members of high officials of both parties, all parties indeed, civil society, human rights, monitoring groups, and this is a recurring decimal. It was also something that came up from the report of the last Commonwealth Observer meeting at the 2006 elections here in Uganda, and that was one of the concerns that was highlighted in their conclusions to the final report and recommendations that steps should be taken to address it. And clearly it is something that this observer group led by myself now will have to address yet again. And we certainly shall, but that is something which is not peculiar to Uganda, but concerning. People are deeply concerned about the amount, huge sums of money, and it's not only in terms of bribery and corruption, but the whole business of the cost of an election campaign, and this is universal, is concerning people now.
Thank you very much, Dame Billy Miller, head of the Commonwealth Observer mission to Uganda. Back to you in the studio, David.
Mohammed Ado, thanks very much indeed in Uganda, awaiting the result of the vote there. We're trying to get in touch with somebody in Bahrain once again, but while we try to make that connection, we're going to talk about whaling. Yeah, whaling, the Japanese whaling fleet on its way back home after its annual whale hunt was cut short by almost a month. Didn't get anything like the number of whales that they wanted. Japanese government saying it's because of harassment by the anti-whaling group Sea Shepherd. Here's Veronica Pedrosa.
With light beams and smoke canisters, Japan's whaling season comes to an abrupt halt. And now it's official.
For the safety of our fleet, we regret that we have to end the whale hunting survey.
The whaling boats had already suspended the hunt, turned around and headed home after being hounded by a hard-line anti-whaling group. Boats from the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society had been chasing the leading ship, throwing flares and stink bombs.
It's regretful that these disruptive activities took place. So from our point of view, we would like to make sure such things don't happen in the future.
The Japanese boats are allowed to hunt for what they say are scientific purposes. But critics point out the whale meat not used for study is sold for people to eat in Japan. So they say the real reason is profit.
The key here is an economic one. We have to sink the Japanese whaling fleet economically. We have to bankrupt them. And after 6 years, that's exactly what's happening. We come down here every year stronger. They come down here every year weaker. And we're going to drive them out of the sanctuary.
Japan's decision to end the whaling season early's already been welcomed by another government.
In the view of the Australian government, it's not time to celebrate until we get a decision from Japan that they are stopping whaling for good.
And there's a potentially greater threat to the whalers. They're subsidised by the Japanese government, but they've only killed about a fifth of their quota. Having ended the season early, they reportedly stand to lose hundreds of millions of dollars. Veronica Pedrosa, AlJazeera.
Back to events in Bahrain. Let's talk to another of our correspondents in Manama. We're not naming for security reasons. Talk of a lot of casualties at the hospital. What can you tell us?
Indeed, we're getting eyewitness accounts of people coming into the hospital who are in quite bad shape. Some accounts that people are dead, but we can't confirm in terms of numbers just yet. A lot of tear gas fired at Pearl Roundabout, and a lot of difficulty actually getting concrete information because security is really quite tight. There's a police crackdown in that area. A lot of people can't even get near, and there's a lot of concern even about ambulances trying to get in to get the wounded out of there. You can hear choppers flying. You've been able to hear choppers flying for probably about the last hour. They've steadily increased, so perhaps that's a bit of an indication of what's actually happening down in the roundabout.
What did people who were there say had happened?
Police, the army opened fire using live ammunition. That's basically the only reports we've got. People are pretty shell-shocked, as in, this was not expected at all. This was a day of mourning here in Manama. It was not a day of rage or a day of clashes.
All right, well, thank you very much indeed. We'll be back with more live events from Bahrain a little bit later on. These are the very latest pictures we've got from Bahrain. Should emphasize that they are not necessarily, in fact we know for sure they are not of the incident that we have just been talking about. But just to recap, a doctor at the main hospital in Bahrain telling us that it's almost impossible to cope. There are so many casualties from the latest incident on the streets.
Hello and welcome to Witness. I'm Rida Fakhri. Day-to-day perceptions of the Afghan capital Kabul, as shaped by the international news agenda, portray a city on the brink of collapse, devastated by years of war, ruled by lawless extremists, warlords and drug traffickers, its citizens constantly threatened by random violence. But this is a deceptive facade. Behind the scenes, life for the many ordinary Kabulis continues as normal. In a stunning portrait of the city at work, director Oliver Engelhardt presents an intimate glimpse of the daily rounds of 4 Afghans: the general, the sweet maker, the martial arts teacher, and the bone setter. They live scattered around the city and have never met, but together their simple stories provide an extraordinary insight into Kabul at work.
یک ذره جوی دقیق است.